We know what we like to do as an evaluation. Dave, I'm sure your evaluation is 100 times more complex, more detailed, more involved than mine. But effectively, if you look at the Medicare guideline as an example, the absolute required elements for an evaluation are a diagnosis and a functional assessment. And when you look at what they call a functional assessment, they recommend optimal, a functional outcome measure created by APTA. You look at something like squatting on the optimal questionnaire. You have 4 numbers. They're basically a 0 to 4. They can do it, they can't do it, or it's some level of difficulty between. And so I could do that through a telehealth platform and at least get that patient started. And then if your practice, if your culture, if you want to do more, and I did choose these words intentionally. So basically, I've heard lots of you mention that you have a wait list, so lots of private practices. I've battled against wait lists. I'm just telling you guys. For a decade, nobody wants to listen to me. That's okay. That's why I'm here.
So you don't want to have the wait list, or you've battled?
I would never have a wait list. It's absurd to have a wait list. There are ways that you can get rid of a wait list that benefit the patient and benefit the therapist. So I basically, in my Facebook post, I said, have you considered hiring a telehealth therapist? Now, this would be a topic if you guys want to get into it today. My wife has been out of patient care for over 15 years now. She's been all, raising the family, doing stuff with the boys, but now she's finding that she has more time. She's doing 90% volunteer work, and she was like, maybe I can get back in and maybe I can do some work. What do you think is the best thing for me to do? So I put this post out because in my mind, I was thinking, it doesn't make sense for her to go start treating patients, but maybe she could help some other therapists do telehealth evals to offload their wait list.
Telehealth triage, man. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. I mean, if patients are going to be sitting there, you might as well have them engaged, get that telehealth evaluation done initially. So I said, look, you could hire a contract therapist to perform telehealth evaluations. The secret behind that is my wife is available. Okay. Number 2, you could hire a contract therapist to perform the telehealth evaluation and work that patient into your existing schedule. You could try to hire a physical therapist assistant if you can't find PTs to hire. Or the third option is you can hire a contract therapist, let them do the telehealth evaluation, and who knows, maybe the patient likes it and the patient wants to stay on the telehealth, ecosystem. And then I gave them 3 options in the poll. I said, and I chose these words intentionally, quote, nope, I'd rather make them wait. And Jimmy, you said, let them eat cake. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Right.
But I said, nope, I'd rather make them wait. Number 2 is, yep, the therapist would need to follow my framework, which is tough, but it could be done.
Right.
3, maybe, never considered that. And of course, I shared this on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I knew the poll would be completely flip-flop between the 2 platforms. And sure enough, it was. Facebook, 67% said, nope, I'd rather make them wait. I'm going to take a look at LinkedIn, but what are your initial thoughts about that?
I mean, doesn't surprise me. Right? Before I saw the results, when I looked at the question, I was like, people are going to say, I'm the secret sauce. Right.
I was a little surprised with the percentage of folks that answered that. Like, I don't know. I figured it was like 25 to 50% would say, let them wait, make them wait, whatever. But I agree that the audience loves when there's conflict, tension, disagreement, potentially between Tony and I. They love it. We get feedback from it all the time. But I agree 100% with Tony here. And this is like, for example, I want to have a wait list, right? So that's what people chose. So that means, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that means you want to wait a little bit longer until you have more results in the community. You want to wait a little bit longer for word of mouth referrals. You want to wait a little bit more for that reimbursement insurance money to hit your bank account. You want to wait for your revenue. You want to wait for profits, for results, for Google reviews, for everything. That's crazy. I agree 100% with Tony Maritato about getting these new evals in as soon as possible, sometimes even bumping your current patients that day. Let's get into it.
Oh, okay. So I think originally when because we have a group chat, I think originally, maybe I read it wrong. I thought we disagreed, but that is, I agree. I think we're all three going, no.
All three of us. Yeah. Okay. All three of us absolutely agree. And of course, I'm looking at the LinkedIn poll. So only 7% of the people that responded on LinkedIn said, nope, I'd rather make them wait. Everybody, 93% chose one of the other two options, either, hire a therapist to do it, or I never considered it because I didn't know it was available. To Dave's credit, 100%. Like I even teach this in my Medicare course. I'm like, look, if you're in growth mode, if you're trying to build a business, trying to build a foundation, you never let that patient wait to get them started, get them an evaluation, build your plan of care. I would bump people out of existing appointments if I needed to. If I didn't have access to my schedule and I was a mobile therapist and someone called, I would book that appointment for the same day. If they call in the morning, the next morning, if they call in the afternoon. Like my metric, and it's still the metric to this day, is I want evaluations completed within 24 hours from the first point of contact, usually a telephone call. And that takes priority over everything because the people I'm already seeing, they know me, they like me, they trust me. And here's the thing, the courtesy I extend to the new client who should get started today is the same courtesy I would extend to the existing client. So even if I was working with a client and I had to step away, I would say, hey, I'm sorry, I need to take this call. This is a patient that might have an urgent question. The patient with me knows I would do the same thing for them. If they called me, I would prioritize them. I'm prioritizing the new person. And that is the way I believe things should be done. But I think we three are in the far minority because most therapists, they're going to push it off. They're going to make them wait. And a lot of them will say they're coming to see me, not anybody else.
Right. Scott does have a good point, right? Because we don't know the psychographics of the people answering this question. He says it depends on who the audience is owning. Practice owners, which might be more people on LinkedIn or not necessarily on LinkedIn, but more active on LinkedIn, or staff therapists, right? Do you think the differences would be stark there? Do you think there'd be a big difference?
So I would tell you, and I'm sure Dave agrees with this too, it's the culture. When I was a staff there, well, I was never a staff therapist, but when I was a staff for anywhere, I had the same personality. I was like, absolutely not. We got to get him in. Let's get him going, whatever I have to do. And I think Scott and I think a lot of people here that have gone the private practice route, they have that drive in them. Now, I wouldn't say staff therapist. I would say if you're the complacent therapist who wants to clock in, clock out and not think of it any other time, why the heck would you prioritize? If I'm an Athletico therapist, nothing against Athletico, I'm going to get paid the same amount regardless. There's no reason for me to prioritize anyone new coming in. There's no advantage to it. Why would I even try to get new people in or condense my schedule or do anything? It's because it's deep inside your soul. You are a production person. You are somebody who wants to achieve. You're somebody who's pushing the boundary. You are somebody who's going to be successful, whatever you do. Dave?
So I'll ask a question from the folks on the Facebook side that chose to select, I'll let them wait. This is the question I want to ask Tony, because I know that this is what they would pose as their biggest challenge or issue or their question. So they would say, Tony, if I evaluate this wait list, right, I don't have enough capacity to schedule out all of these other waitlist patients as well as my current block of patients, because everyone wants follow-ups, everyone wants whatever, 2 or 3 times a week or whatever. So the question, Tony, would be, if I fit in this wait list, let's say this week or next week, I try to fit in the evaluations, my practice doesn't have the follow-up visit availability in my schedule. How would you answer that, Tony?
So this is the most exciting part of being an entrepreneur, of being a business owner. You see market demand. You have a problem facing you. You build a solution. So if you say, okay, I can't fit them into the existing schedule, Well, how do I fix that? What can I do? Can I create another alternative solution? Can I bring RTM into the mix to help those patients feel engaged? Can the therapist that does the evaluation, create a framework that allows that patient to say, well, I know I'm not getting 2 or 3 days a week treatment, but at least I'm getting started. At least I'm moving in the right direction, as opposed to saying, nope, you just got to sit there and lay away. I will get to you when I get to you. I just don't think that's a good experience. But then you can flip the script and you say, well, hey, I'm an exclusive therapist. Nobody else in my area does what I do. I'm the only one who can do it. Those patients value what I do so much that they're willing to wait 6 weeks. Okay, then raise your prices, double, triple your prices, control capacity. You have to understand how to control capacity, or else you're just making them suffer for no benefit. Yeah. Like there's no advantage to that patient. There's no advantage to you as the business owner. You're just spinning the hamster wheel and not really getting anywhere.
Yeah. Now, the follow-up question to that, though, because you've posted recently and probably the past 2 or 3 years about different ideas around hire a contract therapist for the demand, hire a telehealth therapist for the evaluations, and try to create a system around this demand. These owners would then ask you the follow-up question, or they would say, the challenge, though, Tony, is if I don't want to, or I can't create a system for this demand because the wait list has an ebb and flow. In July and August, we don't have a wait list. In September and October, now we have a wait list. So you're asking these owners to do more tasks, a new project to create a dynamic solution, because this ebb and flow of the wait list, they have this wait list because they stow people away. They can sit there and wait. But then in July and August, there is no wait list. So they don't need that solution that you're talking about. And that's part of the challenge, is it's like a whole other new thing to, manage. Right. And I do agree with you. It's not that to manage. It's not that challenging, though, there's PT Match, there's Indeed ads, there's LinkedIn. There's ways to hire someone who has they're full-time at Athletico and then, part-time with you, and they can do part-time just evaluations only or whatever. There's ways around it. The challenge is that these owners are already so swamped and spinning so many plates, and you're adding another plate for them to spin. And it's a dynamic plate, not a plate like you spin it and just hold it there. It's like it comes and goes. And so that's it. I don't know, am I talking too much into it, or is that something that you think these owners would be saying?
But that's why we use the plate analogy, because that's why it's the plate analogy. You don't just put somewhere. That'd be the shelf analogy. It's the plate. You have to spin it and pay attention to it, and then you can go away for a little while. So I would say understand what business you're in. This is the type of problem you want to solve or not. This is also your job. Your job is actually, as Tony would say, your job is not to be elbow deep in patient care. Right? If that's what you want to do, then be a clinician, work for someone, work with someone. But this is actually your job. I don't have an air conditioning problem in November, right? But I'm juggling air conditioning problems in July because I need the clinic to be a certain temperature. So if it ebbs and flows, then your job is now to take care of the air conditioner. Or, literally in radio, I worked with a group of people who bought an abandoned mall in Northeast Pennsylvania, way outside of Scranton, where we were located. So far away from people. And they essentially tried to build an entertainment plex, laser tag, video games, bowling. And I said, I got to be honest, man, I'm really curious. Why did you put it 45 minutes away from Scranton? And he said, look outside of that parking lot. We got lots of parking. If I put this in downtown Scranton, we would have a parking problem. That's a great problem to have, bro, because right now we have an empty parking lot problem. So I'd say if you look at it like this is the reason you got into business, right? Or, as Tony also, there's a caveat. Is this the kind of business you want to do? Maybe you want to be 1 or 2 people in the clinic. If that's the case, triple your rates and say, you know what, go down the street. So decide what type of business you want, because there's 2 ends of that bell curve.
That's another thing, though, because a lot of these owners that are replying, or in general, because there's just more in-network owners across the country. There's thousands or tens of thousands of practice owners that are in-network. They cannot raise their rates, or they believe that they cannot raise their rates. They're not dropping the lower paying contracts. They're maybe not even adding cash pay services. So Tony makes it respectfully, makes it sound easy sometimes because you're still taking all the in-network contracts. Tony, these owners might also say, and I want to chime in, I'm trying to chime in for them because they're not here. They might also say, Tony, I don't know, show us your books. You're doing these in-network contracts. What are you charging out of pocket in terms of telling us to raise our rates? These owners either don't believe they can raise their rates, they're not providing enough out-of-pocket value. So you're right. If they charge out of pocket, they absolutely would thin out the wait list. But then in July and August, they might have less volume than they did this past July and August. So go ahead, Jimmy.
So let's talk about those scenarios. Hang on. And I hear this argument all the time. It's, well, how do I do that? How do I charge this person this much when I'm charging somebody else something different? Who cares? Like, have you never walked into a store and seen something on discount? I was just in the supermarket yesterday and I was buying steaks for 50% off. Like, that happens. When we were in South Florida, there was a massive influx between January through March, huge numbers, triple the volume compared to like April or August, September, that time of year. So if you have something like that, you build a system, a business that works within that. You set your prices. I prefer set your prices high and then offer a discount when things get slow. Or what we used to do was we would take the extra staff that we had and we'd be like, look, go get a skilled nursing job 2 days a week, 3 days a week. We don't have enough patients to keep you busy in the slow season the whole time. You can go get 50% more profit if you go work a skilled nursing job or a home health job. And you can keep your base here so that when season rolls back around, we'll fill your schedule back up. There's always ways to make that work. And the idea that you can't change your pricing dynamically, look at Wendy's, look at other businesses that do it, airplanes, booking tickets for flights, they do it all the time. I don't know why we have this misconception that once I set the price, it's set in stone. Absolutely not. We can change the price day to day. I do it. If I'm not in the mood to treat you, I'm going to charge you more money than if I am in the mood to treat you. If it's a condition I don't want to treat, I'm not going to do it unless you pay me enough to make me want to treat that condition. Hang on, Dave. The other part of it is, shoot. Okay, go ahead, because I forgot the other part of your comment.
So with the wait list, could the owners just say, they call, I don't know how many, do you even know how big the wait list is? Have you heard of ever numbers like 6 patients, 8 patients, 15? Maybe it depends on the practice size, obviously, right? What volume are we even talking about here?
I don't know. People just say 3 weeks, 6 weeks, but you reminded me of the other point. So the other point is back to me. What do I do? There's a difference between what I say and what I do. I basically set mine up where if I'm averaging 4 units a visit, right, in my clinic that's insurance based, and I'm starting to accumulate more referrals coming in than discharges going out, I start to go to 3 units. I go to 2 units. I go to 1 unit. That is one version of raising your prices because
no one else does that.
Huh?
No one else does that.
No one else is willing to do that. They're like, this is my schedule. It's set in stone. It is never going to vary. You bill units, you don't bill visits. And so if you're billing, quote, selling units, you have variability in that, and if you look at Medicare, just as an example, and I've shared this a bunch of times, when I do more than a single unit in a visit, Medicare reduces the other units based on the multiple procedure payment reduction. I will maximize Medicare reimbursement. I can nearly double my revenue, depending on how it's done, by reducing the number of units and getting more Medicare beneficiaries in the clinic. And I would argue, not only does it make it more profitable for me, there's no additional documentation because documentation is based on units, but there is increased profit, which makes it easier for me to help more people, to access more people, to pay my staff more. There are so many advantages to going and optimizing. And I would say a patient coming 5 days a week for 1 unit visit doesn't mean they're only in my clinic for 10 minutes. They can be in my clinic for an hour. I've got the space. I've got the time. It doesn't affect me, but that increases my profitability, doubles my profit, increases my revenue, gives me more resources, and makes it easier for me to handle more capacity. And then when things slow down, okay, I start going to 2 and 3 and 4 unit visits. I go into fewer frequency, but longer duration. There's always ways to do this. We do it in exercise, increase intensity, lower repetitions, like you working on strength, on power, on endurance. It's the same principle for our business.
Let me ask you this, 2 questions. Why are healthcare providers feel icky about doing this? Is it because no one has done it and they don't want to be the first? And then my follow-up question is, 5 years from now, is this going to be commonplace?
What do you think, Dave?
Commonplace? No, I think it's like using a fax machine. It's just the thing that they've always done, and it's just going to continue. And why don't others use this? I mean, again, I've said it a million times, like Tony is just built differently. He thinks creatively. A ton of other owners, again, they're so busy with so many different things, and they're just like almost respectfully, almost like robots. Like Tony, like we're billing, units and visits, and like we have the set time, and we're trying to maximize, 3.3, 3.5 units a visit, 4 units a visit, whatever. Like we get paid based off of units, and so a patient comes in, and we are trying to legally and compliantly maximize the billable unit. I don't think it's going to change. Why don't they? I'll kick that over to Tony.
I agree. I mean, it hasn't changed in 30 years. Why would it change in the next 5 years? I don't think it's going to change. I agree that I'm not beating up on those therapists. Like, they are killing themselves. They're working every minute of every day. When I talk to family members that are working in tech, working in different kinds of industries, like, they're spending their day. They do probably 5 minutes of actual work for every hour that they're paid. The rest of their time, they're just hanging out. They're shopping online. They're doing stuff that has absolutely no extra value to the company. I've never seen a therapist be able to have that kind of productivity standard. So they're killing themselves working so much. They just don't have time to think. But when we come out, hopefully, and we share some of these ideas, my intention here is, just get the ball rolling and be like, I never thought of it. That's why in that poll, I said, maybe I never thought of it that way, because they don't even realize that this is an option, And so that therapist, like my wife, sitting at home, boys are growing up. She's looking for some extra things that she could do. She wants to use her knowledge. She was an amazing therapist, 100 times better than me. She could be accessible to any clinic in Ohio, just because she's licensed in Ohio, who needs to get an extra evaluation in. And even the word evaluation, I think it's misguided, because what does evaluation mean? What is an evaluation? We know what we like to do as an evaluation. Dave, I'm sure your evaluation is 100 times more complex, more detailed, more involved than mine. But effectively, if you look at the Medicare guideline as an example, the absolute required elements for an evaluation are a diagnosis and a functional assessment. And when you look at what they call a functional assessment, they recommend optimal, a functional outcome measure created by APTA. You look at something like squatting on the optimal questionnaire. You have 4 numbers. They're basically a 0 to 4. They can do it, they can't do it, or it's some level of difficulty between. And so I could do that through a telehealth platform and at least get that patient started. And then if your practice, if your culture, if you want to do more, you want to do manual muscle testing, you want to do goniometry, you want to do any of the stuff that people think is important, go ahead and do it on the follow-up visits. Do it in the next session. You don't have to have all that stuff done, air quote, to have an evaluation. The diagnosis pretty much gives us everything we need right out of the gate. Therapists make it too complicated. They need to see a simpler version.
That's what I was going to sort of chime in or ask on, which is, are we doing this? I've heard before, I've talked to people who've taken large chunks of PT documentation and run them through AI and said, hey, what do you know about this? And the one glaring thing was, we document too much. Not that we're being required to document too much, not that the evil insurance companies or Medicare, the government says, you got to spend so much time documenting this. We do that self-selecting. The other thing from that analysis was that we are actually providing things we're not charging for. So we're screaming our reimbursement's going down, but we're leaving money on the table because we're being safe These two things that I just mentioned, over documenting and undercharging for things you actually deliver, that's an emotion. That's you being scared. That's what I read anyway.
As a sidebar, I switched over to a new electronic medical record, and I'm not getting any juju, so I'm not going to even mention them right now. But they do have an integration for HippoScribe. Tony's affiliated with HippoScribe. I don't get anything out of it, but we are going to look into that for sure in terms of that documentation and to avoid the over documentation. And if we can just do the audio component and HippoScribe transcribes it and puts it into the note, it's just less work for the therapist if it can just kind of transcribe and like make a note for us. So that's really exciting. The thing I wanted to do real quick is, can we try to get tactical, Tony? Let's say we both have a wait list, right? Let's say we both have a wait list. You know, my practice, we're mobile. Tony, you're brick and mortar. Let's say, you know, Jimmy's at the top of he's a patient, he's at the top of our wait list. We talked about a potential solution. We talked about cash or out of pocket. Even though Jimmy's, you know, let's say he's got insurance and he was potentially wanting to use his insurance. Could owners out there, could they call up Jimmy and say, hey, you have, you know, United Healthcare, and we called you yesterday and we said the wait list is 4 weeks is when we can schedule your evaluation. You're scheduled on our books, on our calendar for 4 weeks from now. Yes.
So can I give my reaction right now first?
Sure.
For what I'm thinking, 4 weeks. Oh man. Okay. In my brain, I'm going, cool. I'll stay on your wait list, but I'm going to start Googling around to see if someone can solve my problem faster.
Right. So then the practice owners out there, they're going to just call the second patient. Unfortunately, like it's like, hey, there's patients everywhere, whatever, like have a nice life. So yes, I agree. So could we call Jimmy and say, hey, we accept your insurance. We have you scheduled for 4 weeks from now. Today is Thursday. If you wanted us to fit you in today or tomorrow or possibly next week, Tony, it would be out of pocket. Pick a dollar amount, $100 a visit, $150, or whatever we're going to say. How do owners out there potentially implement this, Tony? Are they going to say to Jimmy, okay, so for this plan of care, it's going to be the evaluation, then we're going to assess you. We're going to see how many visits you might need depending on your presentation, your clinical presentation, all of that. Maybe it's 2 visits, maybe it's 8 or 12 visits, whatever. Tony, do you suggest these owners out there present this to the patient, say, hey, we have you booked for 4 weeks from now. If you want to get in ASAP, it's going to be $100 out of pocket. And then is none of that going to be run through their insurance? Like, what are the options out there for owners?
So like anything gets complicated. If we're talking about a provider who's contracted with an insurance company, you're in network, you're contracted with that insurance company, you've got some limitations there. Now, the way I would approach this is I would look at that and I would basically say, okay, I'm contracted with United Healthcare. United Healthcare, as of today, does not cover telehealth, right? That's an established fact. Medicare still covers it through the end of 2024. After that, it goes away, which opens doors for us. Let's go with United Healthcare. It's not a covered benefit for telehealth services. What I would do is I would say, hey, we have a 4-week waiting list for most of our patients. If you'd like to get started today, what it is, it's a $150 fee. We can do a telehealth visit right now over the phone. Like literally it could just be voice. Because remember, this is not a covered intervention. It used to be, it had to be voice and video together. That's out the window. So now I could literally charge them $150. I do the evaluation over the phone. They jump to the front of the line. Now they come in for therapy. It'll get billed to the insurance for the covered services. If I am a therapist, and most of the people watching this would be, who deliver greater value than what's covered, then you would have other services that they would also be paying cash for that are not covered by their insurance policy. But the idea is we're still in the brain mindset of telehealth isn't covered, I can't offer it. Telehealth not being covered is what opens the door. And telehealth is anything. Literally, when a patient calls you to schedule, you ask them the questions. That is a telehealth session. You get all the information for your evaluation and your documentation. That is a telehealth session. It doesn't have to be treatment. It doesn't have to include the other stuff. It totally can be done. So that's the way I would charge, is I would charge the $150 to get them to the front of the line, but really I'm charging the $150 for the 20-minute phone call to get all the information to start the plan of care and do the telehealth evaluation. If it's cash, you're not contracted, you're out of network, whatever, even easier. Like that one for sure is you say, hey, we do reserve a couple spots. If you want to get started today, it's, this is the pricing for it. If you're willing to wait, if it's not too urgent for you, then this is the standard pricing. You have 2 pricing models. I would put that out there publicly, like 24-hour scheduling has a you do it $500 price, standard scheduling $250 price. But there's always ways to make this work. You just need to figure out how you do it, if you're allowed to do it, and then do you have the team that'll do it? Back to Scott's question. I can tell you today, I've had therapists on my team that would not do it. So I can't force them to do it. They're professionals. I'm not going to make them do it if they're not comfortable with it. So tactical on your side. What do you say? What do you do?
We typically don't have a wait list, I think, because we charge a good amount of money.
Yeah.
You're in the sweet spot then. You're in the spot where supply and demand are equally balanced. That's not easy, but was it ever? It had to be. Like you didn't come out on day one, like come out of the womb as a business and like be perfectly dead on with price, demand, awareness, and all those things. Like, did you ever have this problem, or was it the other way? Because you're in New York City, competition's crazy high.
There is a lot of competition. There's a lot of saturation with different practices. Even since COVID, there's been even more of these mobile therapists. And I had a therapist that was great with me from 2020 or 2021 until 2022. And then he went and started his own practice. We're still on great terms. So yeah, there's a lot of competition. We've never really had a big wait list. All the wait lists that you see online that you hear about, in my opinion, is probably, it's usually like 90% of the time it's in network because of the volume, lower financial responsibility. There's just more leads, more prospective patients out there that are being referred by their in-network physicians, people that want to use their insurance, whatever. So we just have not really had a big wait list. So I've always had the, juggling like the two sides over time. It's like, trying to get patient demand and then getting therapists, like my other therapist, to see them and just kind of like that back and forth over time. But no, we've never had like a wait list of like 6, 7, 8, whatever patients, like these other practices. So I think it's, I don't know, with the dollar amount, like we've done the phone calls, we've done conversion calls, all of us, we've talked about pricing, all that. And so that alone filters people out, where the ones that are not the right fit, they are like, oh, I want to use my insurance, my Medicare, whatever. I'm going to call Fox Rehab or some other place that takes their insurance. So that's why Fox Rehab has a big wait list of 4 to 6 weeks, pretty much like all the time. And that's why we don't.
So this goes back to, and we talked about it, the whole price control model. What price controls do is they limit access to services, which, effectively gives nobody a great experience, nobody a great service. But back to, in my insurance-based brick and mortar clinic, other things that we created. So decades ago, we created the non-covered maintenance program. And what that effectively is it was a way for us to manage the peaks and the troughs of referral cycles. Everybody knows this. You go in, you get 6, 10, 12 referrals in a week, and then all of a sudden you're flooded with new patients. And then 3 months later, doc goes on vacation and now you're down and you have nothing. We were like, I need a way to keep these individuals in the ecosystem, keep them active, but not get on the schedule so that I'm not flooding my therapist with too many treatments. So we said, hey, they're coming anyway. They like being here. It's a great atmosphere. We'll create this program. We used to call it wellness. We call it non-covered maintenance. And basically, if Dave is a patient and Jimmy's a patient and they're both coming in today at 10 o'clock, but Jimmy's doing pretty good and Dave needs a little more attention, Jimmy is going to be independent today and I'm going to bill for my time with Dave. But then if, things switch and all of a sudden now Jimmy no-shows, but Dave is there, I don't care. That's fine. Or Dave no-shows and Jimmy's there. I don't care. That's fine. I have the flexibility because I've got this bank of individuals that are coming to my clinic that are all available for insurance billing when I need it, if I need it. I built that specifically to handle the peaks and the troughs, and this goes back to the joy of business. I love building solutions to problems. That was a problem. How do we handle capacity? What happens if a therapist calls in sick? No big deal. The patients who are coming in, They're going to do their own thing. And I hate the excuse that, oh, my patient is too complex. My patient needs direct, all this stuff. Your patient can sit in a chair and do exercises that are low enough level to, meet their capacity, especially when you're not billing insurance for it, especially when they're the second and third patient on the schedule and you're not going to bill for that particular session. And you know what? I bet that patient actually leaves feeling good and appreciates the fact that you, quote, went easy on them today. Now, of course, you go into, well, what about Medicare Advantage with a copay? Well, what about it? Like, that's okay. You can make decisions based on internal policies on whether you want to still collect the copay amount, but not submit the claim to the insurance, whether you want to not even bill the copay and you want to be the hero. Tell your patient they came in today and you're not going to bill them for today's session. They will love you for a lifetime. They don't even realize that it's because you're making more money treating the other person and billing for those billable minutes and not your patient's billable minutes.
Right.
There are lots of ways to make this work. We used to run a deal where a patient with a high copay plan would come in once. We'd do the evaluation. If we made the determination they were appropriate for therapy, and let's say they had a $50 copay, our monthly rate is $100. We would charge them $100 for the month. We would bill the first visit and the last visit of the month. We collected $100. That's two $50 copays. But in the consumer's mind, in the patient's mind, they got a month of therapy for $100.
Right.
We still got the reimbursement on top of the $50 copay. We were compliant with our insurance contract. The services delivered between the payable visits was general supervision, therapeutic exercise that is not billable anyway, but it was beneficial to the patient. We checked all the boxes. Better for us, better for the patient, better for the insurance company, reduce the barriers to therapy.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.